I just kept searching after that same feeling of being connected. I felt like I really knew these people. I love community. I think that's why I love church so much. I love community. I love creating relationships and connections. I'm good at that. And so I had created this beautiful community online that I loved when I was, a kid and a teenager. And I think I've just been searching for that kind of feeling ever since. Hi, my name is Katie Allred, and I'm the founder of churchcommunications.com, where we help churches clarify their message and help them speak more clearly to their congregations and their communities and figure out new ways to reach them. So this is my Faithly story.
Welcome to Faithly Stories, the podcast that brings you inspiring tales from conversations with church leaders as they navigate the peaks and valleys of their faith journeys through their ministry work and everyday life. Join us as we delve into their challenges, moments of encouragement, and answered prayers. The Faithly Stories podcast is brought to you by Faithly, an online community committed to empowering church leaders, pastors, staff, and volunteers. Learn more at faithly.co. Get ready to be uplifted and inspired as we unveil the heart of faith through stories from the front lines of ministry on the Faithly Stories podcast.
So yeah, if you could start by just telling me your faith journey.
Yeah, I would love to share. So I grew up in church. I grew up in very rural Alabama, and I can remember the first time we went to church, actually. I mean, I was 4, so we weren't going really extensively before that. We had just moved to a new area that was pretty rural. It's where my family on both sides actually came from, but my mom and dad had moved, away, and even actually my grandparents had moved away. So anyways, we had a lot of family heritage in this area. So, when we moved back, we started going to the church actually that my family helped plant, back in 1818, a year before Alabama became a state. So, we had a lot of family history, out in that graveyard. So, we started going to this church, when I was really young, and then I just fell in love with church. I loved the community. I was a very extroverted child. I wanted to be there at all times. I loved the business of church, which I thought was probably a little weird for most people. I wanted to be at the church budget meeting on a Sunday night, and the church van would have to come pick me up because my mama wasn't taking me, She was like, why do you don't need to be there. And they'd be like, no, I need to know how much they're spending. Anyway, so yeah, I think that played a big part in it, but talking spiritually, I started having the head knowledge of understanding Jesus and what he did for me, pretty early on. But then around 10, I started asking a lot of these questions, and I don't think I fully understood then, but I got baptized then, and which is a very Southern Baptist thing to do. I grew up in the Southern Baptist Church. And I ended up feeling my heart knowledge caught up with my head knowledge around 16, really. But even in those years in between that, I was evangelizing on the internet from 9 to 16 on a Harry Potter forum. And so funny because I didn't exactly know what I was talking about, but I just knew that I love Jesus and I love church and I love following what Jesus taught and how we should love one another. And I wanted to share that with the world because that's the good news, is that Jesus is for everyone. And so, yeah, so that's a little bit, that's a short version. Mm-hmm. I went on to lose some. Actually, I lost a friend in a tornado, which is a very strange thing to have happened, but it really affected me very early on with grief. But through that, God actually taught me a lot. And there's not actually a story about this online, and I prefer not to share the whole thing. But I think God really prepared me for that, because then we ended up, my school ended up losing someone in an accident, and then I ended up losing my father in 2008. So I dealt with grief myself, and then I had to help my school deal with grief. And then because I was the Fellowship of Christian Students president at the time, it's a small school. I went to a very small school. And then with losing my dad at 18, I kind of grew in my faith quite a bit. And that's when I answered the call to ministry. And so, yeah, that's a little bit of my faith journey of like understanding, I don't know, where I wanted to kind of fit in. Because in that meantime, while I was doing it, when I was doing the online community thing for Harry Potter, I understood, like, I wanted to do something with technology and Jesus. I didn't know what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
So I studied, like, computer science because I thought, like, that was the closest thing. Like, digital marketing didn't exist as a platform now. And online community, the idea of it just didn't exist. And so I studied what I thought was closest to it that would help me make it happen, and ended up studying like web development, my master's, and and all of that kind of led me to working at a church, and then becoming a professor, and then working at Meta, and then founding Church Communications. And it's a very strange story that's been interweaved, but it all makes sense, like looking back on it. So
yeah, most of life is that weaving, and only when you look back, you're like, oh, all of these interconnect, and God knew exactly what he was doing, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So there's a lot there that you shared, so I kind of want to unpack some of it. What was it about church that like really stuck with you, and like what did you enjoy most about church as a child?
Yeah, there's that saying, it takes a village to raise a child. I actually said that. So when I graduated, I like made a speech, and I remember saying that in high school, like, it took a church to raise me. And I think I really loved the aspect of having all these older adults that weren't necessarily my parents that spoke into my life, and that I could go for advice, and I knew cared and loved about me just as much as anybody else. And I loved the discipleship aspect. I think, churches, they love to build like a program and like do events. And something I really loved about growing up was not that. It was the personal relationships I made with people that were not, they weren't intentional, but they were. The guy who discipled me was my 6th grade Sunday school teacher, who we just became really good friends. And I mean, which is so funny to say, because he was like a 60-year-old man, and it's fine. He'll be okay with me talking about this still. But yeah, he owns a furniture store, but he was so good at like answering my questions, but then also asking me questions back and saying like, all right, but can you find it like in scripture? Can you back up what you're saying with, like some scriptural background or whatever. And so it was really good. And that was a very discipleship relationship that came very organically. And I think having that really good experience early on made me love it, because not everybody grew up in a church for the same 15 years and then walked away with a good experience of it. Of course, there are people in church that will like burn you, but I was really grateful to have had basically the same pastor the entire time. And I mean, the congregation was only like 100 people, so I knew everyone. And for me, that was a really beautiful way to see church. And then I ended up working at a mega church right out of college. So funny, because I told myself I never would. I didn't think, to me, that didn't feel like the expression of church, but that was the one I didn't grow up in that kind. And so it was really neat to see the opposite end of it, and to see how like God can grow and bless that, and how building relationships looks differently that way. But yeah, that's kind of why church in a way. And then like communication kind of just was my native tongue. It was what I was really good at. So, yeah, it was kind of like using my talents for that.
That's fascinating because even you sharing like the joys of your childhood in church, I realized, like me at 40, that predominantly, I mean, set aside like my mom praying for me and saving my soul, like it was really because I had so much fun and most of my good memories came from church. And so
Yeah.
like it stuck with me, and now like all I want to do is like recreate that for other people because it was so like good. And like, yeah, that's just kind of like, and it's funny that, you mentioned that too. So I really think like for children, it's so important to create that environment, right?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, it's so interesting because like our children's ministry growing up, mine wasn't the best, right? It was the early 90s or whatever. We didn't have the coolest, there was no check-in.
Yeah.
There was no check-in system. And I know it's a very different time now and kids are different, but all we had was like a playground outside and Play-Doh and building blocks. Like that's all I can remember. But like I can remember how much Ralph Ramsey and Miss Jean Ramsey cared for me. I can remember, Suzanne Williams buying CDs to make us, to help, like, encourage us to learn our books, the Bible. I can remember those things that are very specific, and Ralph Ramsey isn't with us anymore. He fought in World War II. And these are really great, like, people of just, like, getting to know people on this, like, really personal, intimate basis. But yeah, I think the best memories I have from childhood, a lot of them are associated with church, thankfully. But at the same time, like, they made me feel included and that I belonged and that I was loved. And I think that does look a little differently today. I think we need to stretch more to fight for that kind of feeling for kids and teenagers.
It's one of the hardest things I had to deal with when I lost my best friend, when this was almost 10 years ago. And he was like close to my age. And I honestly couldn't stop crying when I thought about him for like the first 10 years. But like I really see God use that in my life. So I'm just curious, like what advice would you give to people who are grieving and going through that process?
Yeah, grief is a journey and it looks different for everyone. Like you said, you crying every time you thought of him, that's perfectly normal. And it's, I think it's really okay. And I think everybody does it so differently. For me, it was finding that space in the people who told me it was okay not to be okay. And because I was a perfectionist, which is probably why I also thrived in church. And so I didn't want to ever be seen as broken. And it broke me very early on, and it's okay to be broken and it's okay to grieve and cry and have to, get through those things. I think that, grieving looks so different for everyone. But for me, like the best things I could do was just like surround myself with the right people and remind myself that it was okay to miss them. There's that like Winnie the Pooh quote or whatever that like, how lucky am I to have had someone that I miss so much? And I can remember the pastor I worked for at that mega church I worked at saying like, we may have only had this person for so long, but how grateful we should be that we knew them for that long. And so I try to remind myself that like, at least I did, at least I was part of their story and I knew them. And in that way, they stay alive. And so I think that was probably a big learning curve for me. And too, like, spiritual, I think, God had prepared me for the loss of my friend in a very unique way through scripture, just reminding me of this specific scripture over and over again. It's from 1 Kings 19. It says, God went through the mountains and he tore the mountains apart with wind and then fire. But then there was a gentle whisper. He's talking to Elijah. And the gentle whisper in the Hebrew, I believe, really kind of means the overwhelming presence of God. And having that, like, the reminder that, like, this is holy ground, like, the grieving process is just the beginning of the next adventure, for that person, is really beautiful, I think. It also reminds me of Harry Potter, like the Dumbledore, like, death is not but the next great adventure. And, it's sad because they're no longer with us, but at the same time, like, how grateful I am to just have had a part of their story. Yeah.
Thank you. That's such a beautiful, beautiful statement. I never thought of like suffering as holy ground, but that makes so much sense now. Thank you.
Yeah.
So how do you go from Harry Potter to churchcommunications.com? Because in some of the podcasts you were explaining, like, you're just this Christian girl on the Harry Potter forums sharing the gospel, and then you created this Facebook and it blew up.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I did not connect those two for a very long time. I just thought of my Harry Potter experience not being related to any of them. I really didn't even think of it. It's so funny because it was like so far in the back of my mind, right? Because I was a kid. Yeah, so I think I just kept searching after that same feeling of being connected. I felt like I really knew these people. I love community. I think that's why I love church so much. I love community. I love creating relationships and connections. I'm good at that. And so I had created this beautiful community online that I loved when I was, a kid and a teenager. And I think I've just been searching for that kind of feeling ever since. And Facebook groups were just like on the horizon of being cool. I don't know, they weren't really being used. And I was in one group that I thought was really fun, and it was like an entrepreneurship group for women. And I was like, this is cool. There's not really space for people who are doing what I'm doing. So at the time, I had been working at a church for about 3 years-ish at that time, doing social media and web development. So, and I was very much, at the bottom of the hierarchy chart, the organizational chart, doing this work at this mega church. And I was like, okay, but we have so many resources. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to do this job and only do this job, right? So I get to go deep with it, with my knowledge, instead of like a breadth of knowledge, which I think a lot of people had as church communications directors, because they end up doing everything. And so I was like, I'm going to start a group. And at the time, my boss and I, at the church, he was also helping me do some of this. And courses were like a big thing. So we were thinking about like doing a course or whatever, but we ended up doing a group, and the group took off, and we did do some courses, and, those are still good, but the community really, like, I don't know, went on fire, essentially. Really quickly, we had 1,000 members, and then 5,000, 10,000, and now we're at like 33,000 or something like that, which, there's like 300,000 churches in North America, so it's like 10%-ish of the churches, which is insane to me. But like, I think I just wanted to minister to ministers, and I knew that they could help each other and that they could help me. And so I was like, let's create a community strictly around communication, because we can get in debates about theology very quickly. But the one thing we all have in common, that we love Jesus and we love communications. Like, we love marketing and branding and websites and social media. These are all things we have in common regardless of our theological differences. And so, which is a beautiful thing, right? So it's like the big global C church all working together, even though we might feel very differently about some things. And so, yeah, that's kind of how it began. And it's been growing ever since.
I love the fact that yeah, you found a way to create a community around a common problem, because at the end of the day, that's what every company is in entrepreneurship. Like, you have a problem, you want to solve it. I'm really curious as to how you like grew it, or how it grew by its own, or like what is the story? Because part of Faithly is like we're focusing on groups and we want to create that community, but it's really hard to get it going first. So yeah, I would just love to hear your experience on that.
Yeah. So that is a great question. I would love to say that I had some intentional strategy. I definitely did not. I think our first 1,000 members came from other groups where people were tired of people talking about communications, church communications in them. And so they sent them to our group because they were like, oh, this isn't the right place for you to talk about this topic.
Interesting.
So, I think at first we were just like the redheaded stepchild. You know, like they were like, you can send your conversations about that here. Because there were a lot of like media groups, like church media, but that revolved more around audio video stuff and not necessarily like communications things like branding and websites and whatnot. And so we kind of became the, place to filter your topic. So what I loved about like forum administration is you used to have threads about different conversations, which I still would love. But now you kind of have to have different groups for these different conversations almost. Even though communications in itself has a lot of subcategories. So that's kind of how we grew up first, was just people like word of mouth telling people about it. And then from there, it became more of a necessity. And also, I do think we had really good SEO value, to be honest with you, like really good search engine optimization, because we're literally named Church Communications. And people were searching for that because they worked in church communication. And most of the time, like at a church, there's a communication team.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we were just aptly named. I was lucky enough to get the domain name from some guy. Well, thankfully, my boss was able to like negotiate him into giving it to us. He had it for like 10 years and was making VHS tapes or something off of it. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
Churchcommunications.com was like a VHS service. But yeah, so I wish I could tell you it was that, but it was really that. And then also people tagging people who weren't in the group and then me telling them, hey, they're not here, but you should like go and get them and add them, because there was a lot of conversations happening with really good information. And I think people added their friends so that they could see it, because they were like, oh, this is really good. We need to know. And I'd love to say that I was the one driving all this content. That's definitely not the case. It was definitely, these were people who were creating content, who wanted people to see their content and get feedback on their content. So it was very organic and natural, which was really cool. And then like the why I started it was also a little bit because I was mad it didn't exist. Because I too was frustrated and needed a place to vent and ask questions. And so, yeah, that's why it ended up, and I wrote the book, and it was because I was mad it didn't exist, not because I was passionate. I don't think like I'm the best person at this topic at all. I just think I'm the one that had the time. So I did it. That's not because I think I'm the best at it, for sure.
No, that's perfect, because recently I'm realizing that because we're created in the image of God, like the name, image, and likeness, that we all go through unique problems that are actually really common, but it's the first person that says, okay, this needs to exist. So I'm going to start it, but I'm going to get a bunch of other people to kind of grow it, right? And then you kind of like enjoy what you had in your mind grow, but like you don't need to invest all your time and energy into it. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. So what does communications.com do? And like, how do you go about solving that problem?
That's a great question. So first, we are the group, the Facebook group. But then also we offer a blog, a podcast, resources, and soon we are starting consulting and coaching as well, adding cohorts for communications directors to meet like on a weekly basis so that they can learn from each other like via Zoom, so that they can have more in-depth conversations, because I just feel like there's a void for that, and I'm mad it doesn't exist, so we might as well make it exist. And and then also we help churches do websites and those kind of things too, and do communication audits and help them see the gaps that they have in their communication messaging and how they can build, better messaging so that people understand who they are and want to come to.
Could you give me an example of what these people are talking about, or what are some of the pain points that you personally experience in church with communications?
Yeah, I think a lot of churches use like their mission statement as their tagline.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't necessarily resonate with someone who doesn't know Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, people are looking for what can benefit them.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's like terrible to say, but it's true. We are trying to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And so if your church isn't helping me survive
mm-hmm.
and thrive, you're basically not, you're like not what I want. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I think, churches are a perfect way to get interconnected with people who can help you get jobs, that can help you find, childcare, that can help you do, just have community and friends. Like, there's so many good things about having this third place, right? That people talk about now. And it used to be church, and I still think it should be. I think that we've just created it to be such an exclusive club that it's hard to get past the words sometimes of what's on the website or what they're speaking, or because there's like this certain way you have to act, or a certain way you have to, or certain things you just have to understand, right? And so a lot of people may not understand the phrase like saved by the blood of the lamb. That sounds weird. And so we help churches understand that might be weird. And what can we do to make it more, seeker friendly, but then also how can we help them understand that their websites are 80% visited by people who are new.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time they build their website for the 20% of the people from their church that are visiting their website. And that's not who they should be building it for. They should be building it for the community that they're in and how they can serve their community. And honestly, they could be putting community resources on it, and all those kind of things. But they typically don't. They don't have it's interesting. Google would prefer to send people to a local answer for a lot of questions, especially spiritual questions. I found like how to pray or Jesus or whatever, all those things. It would prefer to also give them a local answer, but often there is no answer for how to pray on your church's website.
Mm-hmm.
And so we help churches understand that they should have this content available on their website so that people can find them when they're searching for those questions, because people aren't asking their pastors anymore about what happens when I die. They're asking Google. And so we need to provide them with answers. Somebody's already providing them with answers on the internet. So it might as well also be coming from your church as well, because then if they see, oh, this is a local church near me, I can go to that church and find someone to talk to about this.
So as you're talking, an image that came to my mind was communication that's outward facing and inward facing. So a lot of what you were explaining makes a lot of sense when you're trying to communicate to the outside world, hey, this is who we are in the way you understand things. But is there a split between internal communications and out facing communication, or how do you fit that together to working with one comm team?
There can be. It sometimes often feels like there is. And a lot of times, like for a company, they would say the external is marketing, the internal is communication.
Mm-hmm.
But churches don't like the word marketing. So, and to me, like this stuff that we're doing online, or the way we're talking to the, people who don't go to our church, that's evangelism to me. And so, and we're communicating to them who we are and what we come from. But too, yeah, there's a totally different set of problems that come when you're communicating internally to your church and the congregation that is there, right? Like, there's the never ending battle of bulletins and whether churches should have them or not. That's a fun printed online. Mm-hmm. People have lots of feelings about it in our group still to this day. Like should your baptism be wrapped? Like vinyl wrapped or not? I don't know. There's so many like random things that like you're like, what does it even matter? I don't know. And so and then also how do you communicate like what's going on in your church to your people? So like I think social media should be like an external thing. I think that should be a thing where it's like your front door. You're telling people stories of like life change and what God is doing in your church and what God is doing in the lives of people in your church, more importantly, not just the church at large, but individual people. Mm-hmm. The more we can share that, the better, because that's what church is the people. It's not the building. And so, but with communicating like internally about what's going on, I really recommend like emails and text. Just because, and obviously the pulpit announcements on Sunday morning, I think those three things are really like, to me, the heavy hitters of today of like how people are keeping up with what's going on at their church, the best. And for me, like this social media, I mean, I think it's fine to put some of your announcements out on social media. That's fine. But it shouldn't just only be announcements. If that makes sense.
No, I totally agree with you because I see churches using social media as like a glorified bulletin or bulletin board when it's like majority on that people on the social media space don't go to your church. And this is a perfect time to have exposure. And even as I'm going through my stories and reels of like other people, like, yeah, it like captivates me. Like they're telling these stories about what they're doing. And I'm like, oh, more curious about the church. So to that effect, like what advice would you give to churches to kind of be more effective on social media platforms to be outward facing?
I think look at what's working for other things. So I love the example of Humans of New York. This is very, to me, community driven and also people centric. And they're telling stories of people, where they are, how they are, and it's very vulnerable and honest. And I think the church could use some vulnerability and honesty. And so sharing those stories, I think, is so important. Figuring out where those stories are in your church is so important. And like doing like even funny, the on the street type videos, that's great too. Like you need to show that your church is alive and that there are people that go there and that sometimes they're funny and, those kind of things. I think creating like fun content is great. I think showing your staff having fun is great. Showing your people having fun. And like fun recaps of events that are going on and how you can get involved. I think that is showing the life of the church rather than just graphic after graphic after graphic. That's pretty sterile and like there's stock images. I think actually showing people who go there, even if it's not polished, is better.
Yeah. So like part of this podcast is that I wanted people to know the people on the site and I wanted to get to talk to them and relate to them because even if you go on like Faithly or like LinkedIn, you see a picture and you see all their details, like you don't really get to know them personally. And so it's hard to connect, I love that. So how do you see AI kind of disrupt or maybe help or catalyze? Because like you said, people are going to Google for answers, but now they're just going to go to AI.
That is also true. It's going to happen. And I hope that AI will be as, what's the word, sensitive maybe as Google has been, which I mean is AI, right? Like I think the search engine is AI in this way. As to giving people local answers, I think because there's so many answers, there's so many different beliefs, even within the Christian, world for questions. And I think the more it can point people, especially in the world of spirituality, to a local organization to help find those answers, the better. So I'm hopeful that that might happen. But too, I'm excited about AI because I think it will help us have better conversations.
In what way?
I think, I personally would have loved it if, in my group, I could pull all the data of what people have written, and I know what their top pain points are. I know what's trending, what people are asking and talking about the most inside the group. And these are things that AI can do now, which they couldn't do. It couldn't do before, really. Pulling and searching through all that data so quickly and finding and just writing a response that makes sense. And then creating questions based on that data, right? On what those pain points are or what is trending, pulling resources that can be posted, those kind of things, I think is what I'm excited about when it comes to the community aspect of AI.
That's fascinating because I never thought of that in that context in that way. And we should definitely talk after the podcast because now I have so many other questions. I don't want to get into a rabbit hole.
Somebody please make it. Please, Danny, please make it.
That's the point of Faithly and why I want to talk to you, because we want to fit all that in, because we want to be very community driven and people centric. Because at the end of the day, all people are problem solvers, but we're really trying to solve people problems, So you said community is what you make of it and how you show up and contribute. And what is church but a community of people who love each other? I absolutely love that quote. And it made me tear up because and why I love the local church. How did you come to that realization or conclusion or truth for you?
Yeah, well, I think I came to that conclusion really after studying friendships and relationships in general. Friendship is, you could replace the word church with friendship in that same sentence and get friendships are what you contribute or what you bring to it. And so at the end and social media is what you bring to it, And so how can we make this world a better place? And how can we make the church a better place? It's about you. It starts with you. It doesn't start with necessarily your pastor's got too much to do. So if you see a problem, you should solve it. Or if there's something bothering you specifically, you should solve it. Because there's not going to be a better time or a better place. And for me, church is this beautiful way of having community, of having resources, of having shared resources. It's so funny. I had read when I was 12, I had read The Irresistible Revolution by Shane Claiborne. Shane Claiborne. Who's very much a hippie. Before part a hippie Christian, I guess. And it's so funny that I got my hands on this book because I was not, right? I was raised in a very a legalistic version of Christianity in a way. And do this, do that, don't do this. And I think having read that book at an early age, I saw that there was this different way of church is meant to be this living organism and it's meant to be beautiful and broken and different and a family, because families are not perfect. And so I have, been striving to figure out what that looks like kind of ever since.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of my drivenness for community was, or is, really because I miss being part of like a very cohesive family. And it's funny how like God uses that so that I can help other families. Yeah. Yes, I'm longing for my own.
Yeah.
Right.
I just wanted to add too, the world is super disconnected right now. We're more connected than we've ever been, but more lonelier than we've ever been. If you like search, and this is how I started a lot of my like talks, like if you search right now, like who's the loneliest generation, you're going to find headlines for Gen Z's the loneliest, millennials are the loneliest, boomers are like every generation's the loneliest generation. And some kind of, I remember there's like I think the stats from like Cigna, like 1 out of 4 people don't have someone they feel like they can intimately have a conversation with, like share something personal that's happening in their life with. And that is bad.
Yeah.
It's not good. That should be something the church should feel passionately about. More so, because that's the love of Christ to me, is being the person that you can share someone with and not feel like you're going to be chased out of town. And I think we've made it the place where you feel like, oh, I absolutely don't want them to know because they're going to chase me out of town. And I think that we're all longing for that sense of home, that sense of family, that sense of belonging, and the church should be that. And so, that's hard. It's hard because they're all broken people, and we've all got these ideas and these rituals that we've set up for years and years about what it should look like or be. And so I don't have like a great answer for that quite yet, but I think it starts with like people like us at least having a conversation around it, because otherwise it's just going to keep being the same thing it's been probably for like the last 50-ish years. I think like there's been certain places, pockets of families that work really well, of churches that work really well. Like you and I had good, like, we remember really good things about the churches that we grew up in. Like when my dad died, the ladies of the church that I grew up with came to our house and cleaned it top to bottom the day after my dad died. Made us leave and said, we're going to clean this house. And they scrubbed it. And it hasn't been that clean since. And then also helped my mom go through my dad's belongings. And I think about that, and to me, that's church. Like, my aunt and uncles didn't do that. They didn't show up. But my church did. And so I think that's the beauty of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of agree with when you said like online church is church, because again, it's about the people gathering together. But in your opinion, how do you also, because unless you're meeting in person too, I feel like you lose some of that relationalness, right? So how do you combine, having people gather online as a community, but also like encourage them to meet in person?
Yeah, that's kind of the rub, right? Like that's kind of the friction of online church. I love the idea of it because, like I said, I love those friends of mine in my Harry Potter group. I love the people I have in church communications, and I have not met many of them. And many of them feel like they know me personally, even though I may not necessarily know them. And that's the issue, right? It's like, there's not enough like room. And so I do think like I think it starts online. I do think like I would love to encourage that in-person involvement, whatever that looks like, whether the online church has a meeting a few times, 4 times a year, once a quarter or something in one place, or whether they set up like local chapters where people watch together in their homes. I think that could be an interesting innovation of it. Because, yeah, you're right. Like, online people can't necessarily, they can send money though. Like that, they can do different things. Like, you know, like it may not be exactly like it was. So that's the interesting part. Like, they could still send us a cleaning crew, like after someone passes away. Like, so it's a little different. So I do wonder like what that like looks like exactly. I don't know that I have that figured out either. And I think some churches are doing it really well. Like Saddleback has a really great online church. Jay Cranda's amazing. He oversees that and is the pastor of it. And like he flies to anywhere where somebody wants to be like baptized. And most of the time, a lot of those places do have those like home churches where they're all watching together and they've kind of created their own little small group around it. And so I do wonder if like that's the future of church, because I don't know that it's big. I don't know, and that's funny because I worked at a mega church, right? I think that our generation is burnt out from that, and really does seek the wanting to be intimately known again. And I think Gen Z sees through that. And while it's so good for resource purposes, it is like, it's so good for like meeting and like having like that space is so awesome. It's also, I don't know, it's also so hard because the bigger your space is, the more the community's like, but you could be giving that to the poor. And like, what are you doing? Like, and you could be serving them through that building. I don't know, I don't know what that is, but there definitely is like a balance of what that looks like. But I definitely feel like the future of the church is smaller. And also my pastor at the mega church used to say, the first Reformation was about giving the word back to the people, but the second Reformation will be about giving the ministry back to the people.
That's good.
And I think that's where we start. So that means it might be in homes and it's going to look smaller and different.
I totally agree with you. Now, I don't know how we're going to get there, because I've always said the church is supposed to reflect the home. The home is not supposed to reflect the church. And I feel like, and this really comes, and you'll hear me say this a lot on the podcast, it really is how we started off in like the birth of the century, of like an industrial mindset of constantly scaling and building up.
Right.
We're so like scarce of resources, but now we have too many resources. If you really think about it, we are like a glutton for information and technology. And now I think, like you said, we're going to trickle back to, okay, but now we need to build out relationships. And, the whole online church thing, the thing I was thinking about is like long distance relationships. Maybe we will just find a way, because one thing I know about like two people dating that are crazy in love with each other, and they're like,
they will find a way.
They will do anything and everything. And I think people who have that genuine heart for each other will do the same, because we're just human. I totally love that.
I've said that on a podcast, I think, before too. That like online church is all like online dating. Like eventually they're gonna see each other. Like that's just how it is. But and I think about too how good it is to build a network that's wide. That's not just local, because we're very much becoming a nomadic culture. We're not like staying in one place for 50 years like we used to. We're very much like picking up and moving. Especially as millennials, like most of us don't own houses, so like we're just like, oh well, I might as well go. I think that opens up opportunity too for jobs and so many other things and different ways of life. So I don't see it as a bad thing. I just see it as a different thing. It just looks different.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions as we end this podcast. When was the last time you changed your mind about something?
That's hard. I've changed my mind about a lot of things recently. I don't know if I want to share them all on the podcast.
Okay, no, just one. Anything. It could be silly. It doesn't have to be serious. Or maybe
Something
communication style. You thought was like, oh, this is the way, but with new information, you're like, oh wait, oops.
Yeah, I think well, this wasn't really a recent one though. Like, I changed my mind about Snapchat one time.
Okay, let's talk about that. How? How can Snapchat be used for? Because a lot of young people are on it, and I don't think any church is on it.
Well, I had our church on it back in 2015, and I changed my mind because you can change settings, first off, to make it more safe, but two, I think the ability to have conversations with people, like one-on-one, that you can do in Snapchat is like maybe worth the risk. And then, when things happen, which they will regardless, like, of what platform you're using, whether it's in person or not, things are going to happen. And when they do, you have a system, you have a plan for when that does happen, something that you thought was inappropriate happens. So I think, like, taking the risk of making a relationship and reaching out to people, even if it's different. And I think, like, I've thought that about, like, Twitch or, like, TikTok. I remember at first, like, when TikTok came out, I was like, no TikTok. Like, that's a terrible idea. And now, like, I spend the majority of my time on TikTok, so I can't even, like, say it's a bad idea anymore. Or, like, the idea, I used to think, like, everything that came out of the churches, like social media needed to be from the pastor. And now I don't think that at all. Like, I think it should not be from the pastor, actually. I think everything from social media should be from people at your church, not the pastor necessarily. I think it's fine to have him on there, or on there a few times, but like I said, the church is the people, it's not just the pastors. So, yeah.
No, that was great. That was great. Like, when you rewatch this, you'll be like, oh, wow, that was a really insightful answer.
Is it?
No, because it's not about the thing. It's about the lesson you learned and the concepts that will apply to other, like you said, not just Snapchat, but other platforms, where what I'm hearing when you say that is relationship is risk, right? So might as well put in the effort to try to connect. And if it doesn't work, you can just move off platform, So there's nothing wrong with experimenting.
The printing press was evil.
Yeah.
Until it wasn't.
Yeah.
And it was evil for a host of reasons that were outside of like just people like the church thought it was evil because they, and our government thought it was evil because then, they were controlling the church and all that. Like, there's so much more behind like why something is evil than just one thing. So, yeah.
What are you hoping for at Faithly?
Ooh, like, honestly, all the jobs I've ever gotten, and probably the same for you, have been because I've known somebody. I don't think I've gotten a job yet because I haven't gotten one yet because I just applied. So everything that has ever been opened for me has been because I knew somebody who knew me. And so I think that is what I hope for Faithfully, is that there's just this like wide network of people who get to know each other and can help each other, especially in this economy, but like can help each other grow, not only like professionally, but spiritually as well.
Thank you. And how can we be praying for you?
Yeah, well, we're going into the holidays. The holidays are a tough time for me, traditionally, but I am excited about them nevertheless. So, and they're just, I think they're a hard time for a lot of people. So, yeah, I guess just like prayer for not just me during the holidays, but for a lot of people who are dealing with grief. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thanks for coming. This was great. I have so many questions I'm going to ask you afterwards. But
great.
We'll see how much time we have. That's it for the podcast, guys.
Thank you for tuning in to the Faithly Stories podcast. We pray this episode gave you the encouragement you needed to continue on your journey. The Faithly Stories podcast is brought to you by Faithly, an online community committed to empowering church leaders, pastors, staff, and volunteers. The Faithly digital platform offers innovative and practical tools and resources to enhance connection, foster collaboration, and promote growth within the church and ministry space. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help reach more listeners like you. Stay tuned for more uplifting tales from the front lines of ministry on the Faithly podcast. Stay bold, stay faithful, and never underestimate the power of your own story.